Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Inga Cotton. I'm the founder and executive director of San Antonio Charter Moms, and these are Charter Moms Chats, where we've been sharing videos with tips, helping families to problem solve as we're all trying to keep our kids learning during the pandemic and manage distance learning. And a topic that keeps coming up is mental health and how to support the social emotional wellness of ourselves and our children, because this is a really challenging time, and distance learning is hard, and having our lives be so physically cut off from the things that we're used to doing is really hard. And so I'm really proud to have a guest today, Deborah Haddock, and she and I are both members of the Impact Guild, which is a co-working space that's very community oriented and spiritually oriented. And so I'm just really proud to be partnering with Deborah, and she's got a guest post on the blog, and you can find a link to the post in the description of the video, and I strongly encourage you to read it. But right now we can have a conversation with Deb about what's in the post. So let me introduce Deb. So she has a really interesting background. She has a master's of education and a master's of counseling psychology, and she has certifications in wellness coaching and spiritual direction. And so because of the intersection of all these things and her experience working as a counselor, and she's worked with military families, she is launching a business as a spiritual director and wellness coach. And let me just pop up this is her email address. This is how to reach her, and we'll pop that up at the end as well. But that's why I thought, Deb is in a really unique position to comment on, what families are going through, and how we can bring mindful parenting to this situation to try to make our lives better during the pandemic. So Deborah, I'm really grateful to have you as a guest, and we can talk about your blog post and what families can take away from it. So to get started, I was wondering, can you talk about the definition of mindfulness?
Okay, mindfulness is basically just paying attention in the present moment without judgment. So it's about awareness, it's about intentionally paying attention. But I think the real key here is the non-judgment piece. So, if you're a parent and your kids are at home trying to deal with school and just all the other things that go on in a day, and maybe you snap at them for something. Well, the typical response might be to really judge yourself and feel bad. But with mindfulness, what you do is just notice what happened. And then by noticing and not judging yourself, you can figure out how to change it next time.
Right. Yeah. Right. I think that's really key. So it's being in the present moment and also being non-judgmental about.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So the context of, mindfulness works in a lot of different situations. It brings a lot of benefits, but specifically for this post, you're addressing mindfulness in parenting. Yes. And I was wondering if you could talk about what are some of the benefits if they're able to build these habits and add these practices to their family life. What are some of the benefits of mindful parenting?
Well, I think the biggest is that you can create more joy and compassion in your home. And I think everybody wants that. So you can't escape stress, but you can change the way you deal with it, and you can change the way you communicate about it. So that's absolutely the number one. But the other thing that I think is important is when you do mindful parenting, part of that is that you're teaching your children, you're being a model to your children so that they handle conflicts in a better way.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I know I don't there are times in my life when I've struggled with depression or with anxiety, and I want to give my kids the tools so that they don't have to have the same struggles.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So in your post, one thing I think is really helpful is, you're giving parents tools so that they can sort of absorb and then kind of model this behavior. And so you give a hypothetical example about a girl named Emily who comes home from school and she's crying. Now, I guess the distance learning version of this would be Emily steps away from her laptop or her tablet and is crying. So
exactly.
The pandemic version of that, but the concept is the same, right? It's like, right. Your child has had a struggle and you don't know what the struggle was, and and they're upset, and then what? And so you sort of, this hypothetical, think about, like, suggest, like, what could be in the parent's mind, what could be in the child's mind. So can you kind of sort of walk us through that example?
Sure. So as adults, whether we're parents, teachers, or whatever, when a child is upset, the first instinct is to figure out what's wrong and help them not to be upset. But sometimes that can be overwhelming to the child because they don't feel like anybody's actually listening to them. So when I use the example of Emily coming home crying, so whatever might be going on, the first step is to just sit down with the child and calmly ask what's going on. So it's not about, if that other child hurt you, I'm going to call their mother and on and on. It's not that. It's about just listening and not trying to solve the problem so that the child can start to calm down on their own as well. And then, it depends on the age of the child and how upset they are. Maybe they can't tell you for sure what's wrong. Then you can ask questions about how they feel in their body. Does your head hurt? Does your tummy hurt? What's happening? And then help them to understand that sometimes our feelings come out in that way and see if they can name the feeling. So with enough practice, I think children are pretty good at this, but it does take practice. And so sometimes if they're just, I don't know, then what you have to do is sit down and just breathe together. Maybe hold the child's hand and just say, we're just going to breathe together, and kind of guide them a little bit to breathe in and breathe out, and just tell them, just see what happens, see what you feel in your body, and then we'll talk about it.
Yeah, that's a really good framework for thinking about it, because you're addressing, these different layers or different levels of upset, right? So and different maturity levels and different ages, right? And although just because a child is older, they may still not have the emotional equipment, and there are adults who are still learning.
That's right.
To talk with their feelings, and
exactly.
I think moms and dads, like, this might work on your spouse too.
Yeah, it's worth a try.
Yeah, but the initial approach is sort of adult, like, let's talk, like, tell me what but if that's not working, then, right, sit and be calm, right? And then the adult has to stay calm and listen, and not just be like, well, I'm going to call that teacher. Like, that's
exactly.
not, why did that teacher give you that grade? It's like, no, calm, like, slow down, right? Don't rush to solve it, right?
Exactly.
And then, so much our feelings manifest in how our bodies feel, right? So talking about, my dad's really good at this. Last week I was having a tough day, and he was like, okay, what are you feeling? And he got to the problem, and it's something that I wasn't willing to, it's something I was kind of afraid to face, like, it's like, well, that can't be the problem. Well, guess what? That was the problem.
Right. Oh man, what a good dad.
Yes. He's amazing. Yeah. And then taking it down to that, that, like, autonomic nervous system level of, like, sitting and breathing and getting that reset.
Yeah. I mean, if you're just sitting and doing deep breathing, it's pretty hard to be really anxious at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. It just overrides everything, and then you're equipped to face whatever the problem is. Yeah. So in the post, you refer to a book that's really fundamental to this area. It's Everyday Blessings by John and Mila Kabat-Zinn. Am I saying that right?
Yes, John Kabat-Zinn. Yes.
Okay, and if anyone who wants to find the book, click through to the blog post, and then there's a link. It'll take you to, like, the Goodreads, so you can find the book. So I encourage folks to do that. So in the blog post, you mentioned what are, like, some key takeaways from that book. So I was wondering if you could kind of share what those are.
Well, the biggest, of course, is that he says that children need adults. It's parents first, but then it's the other important adults in their life, just to be there for them. So, that's what we're talking about with sitting and breathing and identifying emotions. It's just being there to create safety. But another thing he says that I really like is once a day, try to remind yourself to look at the world from your child's perspective, because I think it's so easy to forget that, especially with little children, they're only seeing this certain part of the world because they're little. And bigger people can be scary even when they don't mean to be. And just the idea that they are not able to express their feelings the way most adults can unless they're taught. And so things can be so much more overwhelming for a child. And sometimes we forget that. Yeah.
I think that's a really good, during these times when things are so strange, right? Like, I was talking to a friend of mine, and like, the adults are in and out of the house a little bit, right? Like they're going to the grocery store, they may have to go to the office and get something.
Right.
But like, unless you're deliberate about it, the children may just be in the house all the time, right? And maybe they go to the backyard a little bit, but unless you are conscious about, like, okay, let's think of something safe that we can do together. Okay, we'll go in the evening, or we'll go early in the morning, or like, oh, this, we'll go to this park or something, right? Unless you're deliberate about it, right? So that's really a good good point to like stop and think about it from your child's perspective. Like my daughter is more sociable than my son, and I need, and but she doesn't have access to the same tools that I do, right? Like I can text my friends, I can, she doesn't have her own phone yet, and and so I need to be the facilitator to make sure that she can have, like, Zoom play dates with her friends, things like that.
Exactly. It's like a friend of mine posts pictures on Facebook a lot because she incorporates taking the kids out to parks and things like that as being part of the school day. And they go on these little adventures, but they learn while they're on the adventures. And I think that's a great example of thinking about life from a child's perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Think about what kind of experience you want them to have. Yeah. And that it's but parents really play an important role of creating that feeling of safety and of modeling the behavior of expressing our feelings and managing our feelings in constructive ways. Right?
Exactly, because kids do pick up, they express the way their parents do. So so it's good for everybody if the adults learn how to just calm down and stay in the moment.
Yeah. So one of the great things about your post is that you talk about some specific habits or practices these are like very practical and concrete that people can build into their lives. And these, like change doesn't happen overnight, but if you add some of these things to your life, and I wrote down some notes. Like one of them was about the mindfulness bell, and the other one was that you're talking about specific like martial arts practices that include sort of self-awareness. And so there's a lot in here, and I encourage readers to click through and read the post and find what you think clicks for your family, what you want to pick up. I was wondering if you could talk about some of those examples, like the talking stick, as a way to manage sibling conflict. And there's just so many good ideas.
The talking stick, comes from the Native American culture. And it's funny because my grandmother was actually Native American, not full-blooded, but and I think back, why didn't she ever teach me about a talking stick? She never did. But I've used it in counseling, in my counseling practice, so that everybody doesn't try to talk over each other. And so in a family, it's the same sort of thing. If more than one person is upset about something or there's a conflict, if you just pass the stick around and let the person who's holding the stick express their feelings on the topic, and then when they're done, they can pass it on to someone else. So it creates a way for people to really be aware, be mindful of what the other person is saying. So that's really helpful. And then the other things like Tai Chi, yoga, things like that, anything that is a mind-body activity helps people with mindfulness. So I've noticed that a lot of classes are springing up for children in the world of yoga or meditation, and they just do it differently than they do with adults, just to help them kind of calm down and be aware. And so that's a really good practice, I think.
Yeah, we've talked to earlier this summer. We talked to a school that uses they have this deck of cards called Yoga for Classrooms, and they'll string together some of the poses. I'll send you the link of it.
I like that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And like, and they taught me to try one of these sequences. I was like, that really worked. Like, I need that. Like, if I'm having a busy day, and the idea is to incorporate it as like a study break, right? So if the child's been doing distance learning and listening really hard to the lecture and solving math problems and stuff, and they just need a refresh before they go into another Zoom class. And then so it's like, okay, stop, do the mountain pose, do the breathing, do the star pose, touch your toes. And it just makes you, and it breaks things up, and it gets you, being at a computer for a while, it makes you,
yes,
it messes you up, right?
It does. It really does. So then you start feeling all the aches and pains, and then your mood goes down. So yeah, that little bit of movement. Yeah. And it's a great way to teach feelings as well. I remember years ago, we were having a bunch of soldiers deploy, and I was in charge of the children at this pre-deployment event we were having. But I didn't have any warning. It was just like, I'm sending you over there. You're in charge of the children. And I'm like,
that's military life.
Yes. So so I talked to them about feelings, and I talked to them about turtles and how the turtle can pull its head in when it needs to kind of, just rest and relax and all that. And so we started crawling around and pretending we were turtles. And then when there was a negative feeling, or we were talking about something rough, we'd all kind of act like we were turtles sticking our heads in. And so we're all laying there with our heads kind of sticking in. And then the general comes in, and he looks at me and he goes, "What are you doing?" And so I told him, and he goes, "Very good, carry on." So, whatever you have to do.
That was a great story. I can totally. I don't know if I mentioned. I went to a Department of Defense middle school, high school for 2 years, and this is in the late '80s. And I was my dad was working as a civilian for the Army at the EFMD on the base, and so I was and that was the best school that I went to. We moved around a lot growing up, and but I could totally see that happening, and so much stuff in the military it just pops up suddenly. Right. And I think military families, they learn, the kids make friends very quickly. They land in a new city. It's like, okay, who's riding their bikes after school? Okay, great, let's go. And they act like they've known each other forever. And it's like, oh, I moved here a month ago.
Oh yeah, exactly. So so you could be turtles at your house too. Whatever you need to do.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I think we all need some of that adaptability, like the military families have. I think we can all look at that as a model of
right.
When you were talking about the talking stick, I was like, maybe Zoom needs to add that as a feature. They need a talking stick feature in Zoom.
That's a good idea, actually.
All right. I'm going to tweet that after this.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, Zoom. That could really help, right? Because sometimes it's hard. We have quiet people in our family. We have more talkative and we're sort of different degrees of quiet in our family. And so having something systematic is it makes sure that everybody has their chance to speak. That's and they don't feel awkward about breaking in or trying to, take airtime away from the talkative people. And
exactly. No, it's good to have an object because of that very thing. So Giving the quiet people reason and permission, and reminding the talkative people to listen. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Well, okay. I wanted to ask you about, you were talking about, working with children who were at a deployment event, and so I wanted to talk about your path and how you developed from this your education and counseling background, to starting your own business as a spiritual director. And just, I just think this is, I want our listeners to know what you do, and I'm going to pop up the email address so that they know how to reach you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I started out teaching. I was actually a special education teacher. I come from a education family. So I started there, and I realized the school system was not for me, but I like children. So I became a psychologist, and I opened my own practice, and I worked with both adults and children. So I did that. And then the opportunity came for me to be a counselor for the military after 9/11. I had gone out there as a mental health responder, and I was just so touched by what people were going through. So I started working with the military, and I worked in the schools, the child development centers, the rec centers, all those sorts of things with children. And then I started becoming embedded in brigades, and I worked with adults and families. So I did all of that. And then my job actually came to an end just a couple of weeks ago. But I had already been working on wellness coaching and spiritual direction on my own for my own business. And I thought, well, this is going to give me the opportunity to do it. I'd been thinking about spiritual direction for years, and the time wasn't really right. And then I moved from Minnesota to Texas, and they had a program at SMU. And so I went there for the spiritual direction piece, which is, by the way, spiritual direction is simply if you're wanting more meaning in life, or you're seeking God and you don't quite know how to do it on your own. Just like I was talking about creating a safe place for the kids with mindfulness, it's the same thing, but it's for adults who are seeking more meaning. And then the wellness coaching, I went to the Mayo Clinic, which is big all over, but very big in Minnesota. And I knew that that's where I wanted to get my health training. So yeah, I'm very excited. When we started doing so much online because of COVID, I realized it was time for me to really step out into these things.
Yeah. And like adapting and learning how to do like tele services and
exactly.
Yeah. I know it's been I haven't been, well, I guess every couple weeks I go and check my mail at the Impact Guild, but I haven't, really spent time at the Impact Guild for a long time. And that's such a, warm and welcoming place. And I miss the spontaneous conversations with people while we're making tea or making coffee. And I miss having events there. And I look forward to that. I mean, I know it has reopened, but everyone has to stay spread out, and we can't really have gatherings.
Exactly. We can't do the events right now, but I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I am too. Yeah. And but I'm really thankful for the Impact Guild because of, people like you that I've been able to sort of encounter, and thank goodness for the Slack channel, right? Where at least we can.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
It was great. I think all I said was, I am going to be losing my job. And next thing I knew, we were talking. So it's wonderful.
Yeah. But I mean, what you've written, I think this is a great toolkit for families and can help them, and it's very, I can see if you have a gift for coaching, because you're doing it in a way you're encouraging us to not dwell on the times when we've snapped at our children, but instead to think about, okay, well, how do I play out this situation in a different way, right? So like if my child is upset, instead of me yelling at them and like, oh, don't you know how to use Google Classroom? Or, instead of, but to be like, let's talk about this. Okay, let's, tell me how you feel. Like, okay, well, try printing again, click on this. And then, right, but don't rush to let's solve it.
Exactly.
Right. Take the time to listen and feel and be present for them. Right.
Exactly. And then sometimes if we just take that time, the problem will solve itself.
Yeah. That's happened where it's like, while we were stressed out, the printer was just being slow, and then we go and check, oh, it's on the printer.
Yeah, I know. It helps us in so many ways. I mean, our whole body reacts to stress, and just breathing for a little while releases that. Yeah.
Well, do you have any? I want to encourage people to get. This is my plug. So the San Antonio Charter Moms discussion group on Facebook is a place where parents and caregivers are welcome to come, and we talk a lot about issues like this. It's a safe space where you can say like, hey, I'm having a hard time with distance learning, and it's a supportive environment, and other parents will comment and and help you find resources to help distance learning go better. So if you're not already a member of the discussion group, I encourage listeners, please join. And so I'm going to pop up Deborah's email address. This is how you can reach her to talk about the spiritual direction work and the wellness coaching that she's doing. And maybe someday she'll be able to hold meetings at the Impact Guild again.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Yes. Or if you just have questions about this article, feel free to email me and I'll get back to you. Yeah,
that's wonderful. And then, Deborah, do you have any sort of closing thoughts or, a message you want to let people kind of, finish the video out and kind of keep thinking about?
I guess my closing thought would be for the parents who are at home during all of this. We talk a lot about how to help our children and others in the community, but, parents need to take care of themselves first and foremost, so you have the energy to deal with everything else. And mindfulness things that I've mentioned are things that you can do on your own, whether it's turning on a yoga video and doing that, or joining a live class online, learning to meditate, taking time to read, whatever it might be. But make sure that you do that every day for yourself.
Yeah, that's true. Yes. Parents, take care of yourself, because your children do need you.
Yes.
And it can be hard to find that calm in the stressful moment. But it helps if you lay that foundation of taking care of yourself.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's a great takeaway, is, parents, take care of your own mindfulness, right? Take care of yourselves, and then you'll be equipped to do mindful parenting and model that for your children.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you so much for the guest post, and thank you for joining me for this chat. And I look forward to seeing what discussion we have in the group. And if readers want to reach out to Deborah, her email address is in the blog post as well. So
okay, thank you so much. I really had fun today.
Thank you.